Hello everyone, welcome back to my show. Socks is here. We're sitting a bit awkwardly today. Here he is on my lap in a nest of cushions. Today I thought I'd think about dragons rather than cats. Or should we talk about cats? Because don't stand in front of the camera. You don't want to stand there. Come on, there's no dreamies there. Oh, because I've started a reread of Eragon by Christopher Paolini, which I think I read back in 2008, and didn't go any further with the series. I don't have any special memories of reading it the first time around. For some reason, it's popped back into my head as a series that I need to look at again because I love dragons. And yesterday I was thinking about dragon stories over the years and what they mean to me and where they are in my life, how far back. And they're all there. They're always there, rather. The thing I can't find that's annoyed me, actually, is Rosemary... I've forgotten her name. Manning. And she wrote a book called Green Smoke, and it was a puffin. And there was a series of them about a little girl in Cornwall who befriends a dragon who lives in a cave. And the dragon tells stories, and I think they might even travel in time. And there's a bit of a Arthurian escapade. And I loved those books. They were quite serious. There was a more kind of jokey version of the same kind of story about Albert the Dragon. I can't find the first one, but I've got the 3 sequels here. These were by another Rosemary Weir. And there was Albert the Dragon and the Centaur. You can see these lovely 70s Quentin Blake drawings on the front. Albert and the Dragonettes. Different illustrator, Gerald Rose, and a different illustrator again, David McKee, doing Albert's World Tour. Albert was a bit camp. That's what I remember mostly. Albert the Dragon came out of his cave onto the little beach, which he called his own, blinked in the warm sunshine, and stretched out lazily on the hot sand. Not far off, the Dragonettes, Alberto and Albertina, were paddling happily in a rock pool, the sun glistening off their blue and green scales. Albert regarded them fondly. "The dear little things," he murmured to himself. "It seems only yesterday that I found those 2 eggs abandoned on my doorstep, and now here we are, safely hatched and growing like mad." Usually he's a bit more waspy and annoyed than that. Maybe it makes him mellow to to discover fatherhood in the later books. There's an excerpt from Albert the Dragon in this lovely book, A Book of Dragons, illustrated throughout by David McKee, I think in the 70s again. It's got the Christmas Albert the Dragon story, which is my favourite, and bits of poetry and bits of stories, excerpts. One of the first places that I encountered dragons was in this classic non-fiction book of the late 70s, Mysteries of the Unknown, Monsters, Ghosts and UFOs. The best bit of which was the monsters, as far as I was concerned, and it had a full 4 pages on dragons, but they were very exciting pages. And in these little sidebars, which the Usborne books always excelled at, it told you things about legends and heraldic use of dragons, cultural use of dragons, like the Chinese in their mythology and their parades, the aerodynamics of dragon flight. I remember that bit that the medieval dragon's wings on pictures and so on look completely wrong, these little bat-like wings. And the aerodynamics mean that they would be flying backwards all the time. And the shaggy beast, this picture of a hairy dragon always fascinated me. And the story of the Lambton worm, which of course, living in the northeast, was quite close to us, where that legend had taken place. The idea of the knight who returns from the Crusades to find his whole village and all of his people enthralled to this horrible serpent that comes out of the river, and how he makes his armour with spikes on to fight it. What else? When I was 8, we read The Hobbit at school, which is quite young really, but we loved it. For some reason, I always pictured Bilbo Baggins as having a frog's head. I don't know why. I still don't know why. It was never said anything in the book. Nothing was ever said that he looked in the slightest bit froggy. This is the copy that we had at home. It's this, I don't know who published these. The gilt has almost worn off. I rebought a copy of this in later years. They did kind of classics in these hardbacks. Guild Publishing London, which sounds very proper. And this was out in 78, which would have been about the time we read it at school. Look at that, with a Waterstones bookmark from the 90s. It really matches this oxblood thing. And of course the dragon here, Smaug, is extremely vivid in my memory. Dragons are always, while they're fierce and terrifying and huge and the scariest things you'd ever meet, they are often also urbane and clever and testing. They're there to ask you questions. You have to face up to them. I'm just looking for a bit with Smaug. Here's a bit. Well, thief, I smell you, and I feel your air. I hear your breath. Come along, help yourself again. There is plenty, and to spare. But Bilbo was not quite so unlearned in dragon lore as all that, and if Smaug hoped to get him to come nearer so easily, he was disappointed. No, thank you, O Smaug, the tremendous, he replied. I did not come for presents. I only wished to have a look at you and see if you were truly as great as the tales say. I did not believe them. Do you now? Said the dragon, somewhat flattered, even though he did not believe a word of it. Truly songs and tales fall utterly short of the reality, O Smaug, the chiefest and greatest of calamities, replied Bilbo. You have nice manners for a thief and a liar, said the dragon. You seem familiar with my name, but I don't seem to remember smelling you before. Who are you, and where do you come from, may I ask? You may indeed. I come from under the hill, and over the hills my paths led, and through the air I am he that walks unseen. So I can well believe, said Smaug, but that is hardly your usual name. I am the clue finder, the web cutter, the stinging fly. I was chosen for the lucky number. Lovely titles, sneered the dragon, but lucky numbers don't always come off. I am he that buries his friends alive and drowns them and draws them alive again from the water. I came from the end of a bag, but no bag went over me. These don't sound so creditable, scoffed Smaug. I am the friend of bears and the guest of eagles. I am ring winner and luck wearer, and I am barrel rider, went on Bilbo, beginning to be pleased with his riddling. That's better, said Smaug, but don't let your imagination run away with you. This, of course, is the right way to talk to dragons, if you don't want to reveal your proper name, which is wise, and don't want to infuriate them by a flat refusal, which is also very wise, no dragon can resist the fascination of riddling talk and of wasting time trying to understand it. There was a lot here which Smaug did not understand at all, though I expect you do, since you know all about Bilbo's adventures to which he was referring, but he thought he understood enough and chuckled in his wicked inside. I'd forgotten about Tolkien's addressing us directly as an audience who are following the adventures. There's something very touching about that and very involving and disarming, I think, as well. His friend Lewis, C.S. Lewis, does similar things in Narnia, which of course has dragons of its own. Finally, Anne McCaffrey was somebody I read in my teens. Again, when I was about 13, 14. This week I've been returning to the books of that time, all of them corgi paperbacks. Oddly enough, so is Eragon in a different era, a more modern era. But back in the early 80s, corgi books meant Star Trek books. They meant Terry Pratchett. They meant The Belgariad and Anne McCaffrey. All of them were mentioned in a magazine called, I think, Space Traveller. And that was how I learned about lots of book series for the first time. And at that time, I read Anne McCaffrey. Dragonflight was my first one. And I read a whole bunch of them. When is a legend legend? When is a myth a myth? How old and disused must a fact be for it to be relegated to the category fairy tale? And why do certain facts remain incontrovertible while others lose their validity to assume a shabby, unstable character? Rukbat in the Sagittarian sector was a golden G-type star. It had 5 planets and 1 stray it had attracted and held in recent millennia. Its 3rd planet was enveloped with an air. By air man could breathe, boasted water he could drink, and possessed a gravity that permitted man to walk confidently erect. Men discovered it and promptly colonized it. They did that to every habitable planet, and then, whether callously or through collapse of empire, the colonists never discovered and eventually forgot to ask, left the colonies to fend for themselves. When men first settled on Rukbat's 3rd world and named it Pern, they had taken little notice of the stranger planet swinging around its adopted primary in a wildly erratic elliptical orbit. Within a few generations, they had forgotten its existence. The desperate path the wanderer pursued brought it close to its stepsister every 200 Terran years, at perihelion. When the aspects were harmonious and conjunction with its sister planet close enough, as it often was, the indigenous life of the wanderer sought to bridge the gap, the space gap, to the more temperate and hospitable planet. It was during the frantic struggle to combat this menace, dropping through Pern's skies like silver threads, that Pern's tenuous contact with the mother planet was broken. Recollections of Earth receded further from Pernese history with each successive generation until memory of their origins degenerated past legend or myth into oblivion. And of course, these threads falling into the sky are deadly, and this is when they have to burn them up before they hit the ground. They developed a highly specialized variety of life form indigenous to their adopted planet, such humans as had a high empathy rating. And some innate telepathic ability were trained to use and preserve. This unusual animal, whose ability to teleport was of great value in the fierce struggle to keep Pern bare of threads. The winged-tailed and fiery-breathed dragons, named for the Earth legend they resembled, their dragon men, a breed apart, and the menace they battled created a whole new group of legends and myths. Once relieved of imminent danger, Pern settled into a more comfortable way of life. The descendants of heroes fell into disfavour, and legends fell into disrepute. I love that cover as well. This has had a bit of a comeback, and I saw a reprint in a supermarket because people are buying, and I forget the name of the book. I've got it somewhere, ready to read. Fourth Wing, and that series by, I forget the author's name. Is it Rebecca, maybe Yarrow? Yeah, I've got that ready to go at some point, but I thought I'd read Eragon again first to catch up on dragony things. Somebody tells me that Guards, the Terry Pratchett book, is very dragony as well, and I've dug out my copy of that because this is the one that everyone goes on about that I should have read years ago, and I never have. So I'm giving myself a bit of a fantasy, what am I giving myself? A fantasy update. I'm returning to fantasies I've read before and things I've missed out, like this. The later books in the Earthsea trilogy and the books beyond. I'll have to go back to the beginning and read from the start. So this is my kind of plan for the next little while. A few kind of dragony things. And a bit of fantasy. Okay, goodbye everyone. And let me know if you've read any of these or you've spent any time of your own with dragons. I suppose for me, they came out of my fascination with dinosaurs. And to my mind as a kid, they were all mixed up together. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Okay, goodbye. I will see you again soon.